Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, people of all ages, welcome back to the Sticky Floors podcast. I am one of your hosts, CJ. I am joined by Mr. Will. Today is our 50th episode, man. Episode number 50. Today we are talking about killing them softly. Yo, we've been doing 50 episodes of the show. Mr. Will, what do you think about that, man? The
Yo,
big 50, man. We half a century right now.
it's crazy because I didn't even think of it until you mentioned it maybe a few minutes ago during the pre-production meeting. Oh, shout out to everybody out there listening. Thank you for coming along with us on this ride. Um, and thus, it's ironic that the show we're going to do today is killing them softly because that's what we've been doing, killing them softly. Um, so shout out to CJ. Shout out to myself. Shout out to everybody that listens,
Take
that
that. Yes.
supports. Uh, yeah, definitely shout out to our crew who are helpful to endorse the show and are willing participants in being ambassadors, promoting it. So yeah, definitely kudos to everybody.
Yes, absolutely, man. I mean, yeah, and just to piggyback on that, we're at a push now to get to 300
Yes, sir.
subscribers on our YouTube channel. We were pushing to get to that. That's our goal by October
Yeah,
30th. So, if you're listening to this, subscribe, like, share with other people that are interested in movies, interested in conversations about
sure.
movies. We talk about movies all across the gamut. We talk about things that have been out for years and things that are
Mhm.
just coming out yesterday.
Yes,
And
sir.
obviously tonight we're doing Killing Them Softly. And just for those, if this is your first time listening to the show, we started by doing shows on Apple and Spotify. So our first, I think, 20 something episodes can be found there.
Hmm.
And then starting with I think it was episode 23 or 24, we started doing everything on our YouTube page, Sticky Floors. So definitely check that out and enjoy this ride with us. We're gonna be killing them softly, talking about crime and capitalism in America.
Yes, yes. One would even surmise that, and I don't even know if I could argue against it, that capitalism is a crime.
America.
Yeah,
Right. Some people would say that. Some people say capitalism, crime, and America all go together, man.
yeah, synonyms, man.
Like
You know
like
what I mean?
bread, like bread, peanut butter, and jelly.
Yeah, for real, for real. Yeah, for
So,
real, for real.
all right, so let's get into it, man. You got a summary for us,
Yes,
man?
sir.
Here it
Uh,
is.
Killing Him Softly is a gritty crime drama starring Brad Pitt as Jackie Cogan, a professional enforcer who's brought in to assess the circumstances and restore order. While doing so, Jackie reveals his philosophy of killing them softly at a distance, which he prefers to do due to its emotionless nature. This mirrors how politicians metaphorically kill citizens with broken dreams and promises. Jackie's approach and the ensuing chaos can be seen as an allegory for the 2007 to 2008 financial crisis, a period marked by major risk taking, a systemic collapse, financial bailouts, and a subsequent recession. The film, directed by Andrew Dominic, is set against the backdrop of a 2008 financial crisis in a mob tale story.
Yes, yes. And that summary really encapsulates the two dynamics that are playing out here because yes, there's a part of this movie that's about the mafia kind of robbery story,
Hmm.
that thing. But then there's also part about like the political climate and what's going on in the world at that time. And even though the movie is made in 2012, it's based in like that
Yeah.
2008 world, what I mean, when everybody was afraid that the society was about to collapse due to the financial banking collapse
Hmm.
and then, like just how America was going to deal with and work with that.
Yeah, it's crazy too because we've talked about financial collapses before. With the Andrew Garfield movie that we talked about earlier in the season. I forget which
99
episode of it.
homes. Yeah, we did
Yeah,
99 homes. Yep.
yeah. So I think we dibble and dabble here and there with meaningful topics that are pretty relevant and have widespread ramifications. So shout out to CJ for referencing certain things and bringing them up, which only helped to put the battery in my back to actually search for these movies. Um, but I also want to just highlight and touch upon real quick too. A lot of these movies that we speak upon, especially this particular movie, there's also a double entendre and a hidden meaning, and I'm hoping that the audience can pick up on that. For example, in this movie in particular, you're hearing from three different perspectives who coincidentally happen to be three presidents: Barack
Mhm.
Obama, H. George Walker Bush, and then his father Herbert Walker Bush.
Herbert Walker. Yeah.
And with respect to those gentlemen, each introduction of them is highlighted with the introduction of a specific character.
Mhm.
So I hope that the audience can see the not only the hidden meaning, but as well as the metaphor that is being brought up in those particular situations, a la James Gandolfini arriving from the airport, and you're hearing the younger Bush in the background. Or, for example, when Brad Pitt is introduced while driving across a bridge. Remember, a
Mhm.
bridge bringing people together and the significance of that. And you're hearing Barack Obama's voice, where
Mhm.
he was supposed to be the bridge that united people, and America was supposed to be post-racial after his winning the election that year.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really overlaid well into this movie. And it's fun. Like when I was listening to it, especially the parts about where George Walker Bush was talking, George W. And I was thinking about how during the financial collapse happened during the election.
Mhm.
And at one point, they were actually trying to say that both Barack Obama and John McCain should
Mhm.
temporarily discontinue their campaigns because of it. And they
Yeah.
were like, nah, we're not doing that because this is evident of the reason why one of us needs to be in office
Yes.
because, W was letting people like, run this joint into the ground, right? Like, right or wrong, that was kind of like the thing. So
Yeah.
it was interesting. Like, I thought the placement of putting W in and then Barack Obama really reminded me that that W still had to do those speeches and still had
Mhm.
to say like, well, this is why we got to do this. This is why we got to do the bailouts. This is why we got to do the TARP funding because if we don't, the financial institution of America is going to collapse, which is symbolically the robbing of the American people. Because remember, there was a lot of people that
Mhm.
were like, wait, you're going to use my tax dollars to bail out Wall Street when Wall Street created this financial process in the first place. So you have this like America being robbed, and then and in the movie you have this mafia, this cartel, which the cartel of the mafia bosses is like the banking industry also being robbed.
Yeah, and to add another layer upon that, you have two dimwits who, they stumble upon this. They're
Yeah.
wearing they're wearing dishwashing gloves,
Yeah, right,
highlighter
exactly. They're
yellow.
not even skilled to do what
No,
they're doing. Yeah.
and I don't
Yeah.
even know. Honestly, he says he gets him the sawed-off shotgun or whatever have you. But the way that thing looked, I didn't even know it was a real gun. Like
I didn't think it. I thought if he shot it, it would blow him up.
yeah, you know what I mean? It was like he was packed with an Acme dynamite kit, and he was Wile E. Coyote or something, man. I think the other thing too that like signified the incompetence was Ray Liotta keeps telling the guy like, "You don't want to do this. Like, are you sure
Right,
about this? I'll help you get rid of
right,
the other guy. Nothing will
right,
ever happen."
right,
And I'm sitting there like, why don't they just rush this dude? Like all
right.
these guys are trained killers. They know the ramifications if this guy takes their money.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's like it's maybe that's the point is that why didn't if we're drawing those connections, why didn't the banking industry take better precautions to protect themselves? Like these mafia guys, they didn't protect themselves. They got guns, they didn't use them. They didn't do anything to stop that from happening because I think in a way they know that it's all going to come back to them somehow anyway. Just
I
like the
think
banking system knows this money's going to come back to us somehow anyway because the economy, like the crazy thing, and they even mention this in the movie, the economy of whatever that city is kind of runs off the mob doing illegal stuff
Louisiana.
anyway, so it can't not be going on, like it can't stop because if it stops and everything collapses.
You mentioned something last week too with the Predator, where you were like or maybe it was the episode before that where you said it brilliantly. The system is big enough to create its own answers
Its
and
own
problems.
opposition, yeah, its own
Yeah, so
contradictions. Yep.
I look at it like this. Perhaps they genuinely did look at it as if, yeah, we're going to get our money back. We're self-insured, and
Yes.
therefore we have nothing to fear. Now it's just a question of delving out the punishment to the appropriate parties. And
Yes.
so, I guess the parallel I would draw in the quote unquote real world is when O.J. Simpson got away with, in some people's eyes, murder, and then they were like, oh, you know what, we'll just imprison him for a longer sentence for this petty crime, and that'll be the get back. Or you're in the NBA and they call it a makeup foul, where
Oh
somebody
yeah,
they
yeah,
missed the
yeah,
foul and
yeah.
then whatever
Yes,
have you. So
yes,
in this case, they're like, yeah, you know what, Marky got off last time scot free. He acknowledges in a card game that he robbed his own card game.
hmm
And again, they don't go into specifics about whether or not he offered as tribute to the mafia bosses, whatever he stole,
yeah,
because, maybe that's how why he was able to get away with lack of a punishment. So
yeah,
now it's like, we got to get. Brad Pitt says it excellently. Jackie says it excellently when he's talking to Driver inside the car. Like, you guys know what you want me to do. You just don't want to come out and say that that's what you want me to do. That's why you hired me. I'm
yeah,
hired because this is my reputation. So you
yes,
want me to get back at this guy because you let him go because the streets are talking.
yeah. Yeah, and there's like, yeah, I mean the movie, I think one of the strengths of the movie is that sort of telling this allegorical story that is really about the financial crisis, and you're
Mm,
seeing it kind of a micro and a macro level. There's also this sense in the whole movie of like desperation
mm,
and depression that everybody's kind of
yeah.
experiencing. Even the first scene when the dude is walking through that land of like just trash flying around, like I'm like, is this Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome? Like, what is this that he's walking through? What part of what part of America is this, right? But it's like that's intentional, right? Like it's
Mhm,
intentional to show you that like this is a depressed place, right, in America where people don't have options, right? But like many parts of America, where people feel like they don't have options. And so because of that, they feel like the only chance or way they have to survive is the criminal enterprise,
mm.
right? And so even two guys like this who really aren't criminals, right, and don't really know how to be criminals are forced into a life of crime essentially to make 30 grand. Like they're putting their lives in jeopardy for $30,000.
But that should show you just how high the stakes are and what desperation will make you do.
Absolutely.
Desperation will have you throw your life away. I mean, literally, Squirrel is a guy who's a businessman, but he's done criminal time, so he's been around criminals who are professionals at it. So he
Yeah.
should know you never win going against the mob, and if you are going to do that, you have to be very selective as to whom you incorporate
Right.
into your schemes. So he relies upon Frankie, who, let's just face it, he's a down on his luck type of drifter, who,
Was he
um,
like a magician or something?
yeah. And so it's like,
I'm just joking. I'm just
no, but I understand
he,
what
was,
the point is that,
he
like,
was he
like
was something that
he's
wasn't
something
doing
that was,
well.
yeah, that,
Yeah, something that wasn't
yeah,
wasn't paying the bills. The math
uh,
wasn't mathing
yeah,
for him.
it definitely didn't add up. And it's like, all right, this is the guy you're going to use. He doesn't bring anything as far as a skill set wise that would convince you that they're capable of pulling this off. So your willingness to put his life in jeopardy, what does that say about you? And
Right.
then in turn, he tells you the guy that he's going to get is a heroin fiend. Are
Yeah.
you serious, right? Like,
Yeah. And they're gonna run this. They're gonna run the robbery.
and you're going to trust them not to spill the beans and incriminate you in this
Yeah.
whatsoever. You don't see any drawback to that.
Yeah, well, that's like, as you said, that's the desperation. Desperate times calls for desperate measures. It
Mm,
makes you form desperate partnerships that don't make up and don't add up and don't
yeah.
make sense. And that, I mean, like there's so many things we could get into that. And then I do want to say, like on the depression side, I think that James Gandolfini's character
Mm,
just personifies that. He's
yes.
just someone who has really sort of degenerated down into the only thing they can do is drink and have sex. Like that's really kind of like all they see as their out, because if they're not drinking or having sex, then they're really just depressed with everything that's going on around them. And the scenes with Gandolfini in this just highlight the amount of just depression that not only his character is going through, but then also just the people in general who don't feel like there's really anything optimistic or for them to look forward to.
It's funny that you bring that up too, because and rest in power, James Gandolfini, first and foremost, great actor. Um, him being the personification, the literal like symbol. If you were to open up a dictionary and they needed a real life version of what depression and emasculation is, his character Mickey would be just that.
Yeah.
He comes in off of the airplane, and the two people you see preceding him are an obese, blonde-haired white woman, which would probably be here's my hot take, which would probably be the symbolism for America at that particular time, and then
Interesting. Okay.
to her left or the viewer's right is this flamboyant young person, a male who is appears to be half cocked but oblivious to everything going on. And then in the background, you see James' character Mickey walking very sturdily and very sternly, with his glasses on.
With those crazy red
Yeah,
glasses.
like what are you doing right now? Dressed in
Yeah.
all black as if he
Yeah.
is, death's henchman right there, walking to some poor fool's impending demise.
Right.
Fast forward, then he meets with Jackie inside a bar, and this dude is throwing back shots
I
and
know.
martinis and
I know.
beers, and it's like, dude, you're supposed to be on the prowl, getting ready for like this
Right.
this mission, if you will. And how am I supposed to trust that you're going to be coherent enough to pull this off?
Right. Yeah. Brad Pitt's character is looking at him like, wow, I didn't know this dude was a functioning alcoholic. Like he's concerned
Yeah,
about him. Like, hey, stop drinking. Like,
yeah.
like you've already had too many. And he's just like you say, just pounding them down.
He even
And
says
it's to the
to him
point
like
where
he even says to him like, "Yo, I need the Mickey from 2 years ago,
right,
not this
right.
guy."
Right, but that's the thing, like, 2 years ago, that's gone. Just like 2006, America is
Mm,
gone in 2008. That America doesn't even exist anymore.
that's a good
And
point.
really, it's never been the same from that. Like, once
Mm,
that bailout happened, that reset so much of the way people view the financial institutions in America, and the knowledge that people have about it is different now. Now, how much we apply that is that's up to anyone. But it's
mm,
just the world changed after that, and a lot of people got left behind. And that character Mickey really gets left behind because by the end, he's not even good anymore to
mm.
do the hits that he used to. And by the way, he's doing these hits at a discount. He's doing like killing 2 people for 15 grand. I mean, like you can kill like 15,000. That's it. They made 100 robbing the card game. The two guys got 30 grand each. They're about to get killed for less money than what they actually stole. That means that if they actually went and said to guys, "Hey, look, I'm sorry. Here's $15,000 back," they would have to consider it because that's how much they were going to pay the guy to kill you in the first place.
I'm laughing because literally, it's comic relief, folks.
It's cold capitalism right there, man.
I don't even know if you could call it capitalism, because I've always told people, if I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory, which is what these guys apparently are doing, it's going to have to be for meaningful stakes, not six figures. I mean, like, we're going to have to talk about, like, yo, nine figures,
Right.
like billions of dollars for me to do something of this magnitude, because your life is never going to be able to be the same again. You're never going to get an opportunity to spend this money. So it's got to be something where my children, my children's children, like generations are going to be set off of this one crime, a la, pick your famous family.
Mhm.
So that's the main portion of why I'm laughing. The second part, which I find is very comical and hysterical, is CJ mentioned that the bailouts in '06 changed the
Oh yeah.
curvature of life here in the States dramatically, and then also indirectly and directly impacting the global markets.
Mhm.
So, just a brief surmise, like, this is not the first time. You know, you could go back to what is it, 1919, 19 to 1929. So you're talking about the Great Depression, and then the facts leading up to that, where there was the creation literally of the Fed. Then you can go back to even before then with the instability from literally the Revolutionary War. So you're talking about 1763 to 1776, all the way to the Civil War. So you're talking about 1863 to 1865. You could talk about the various so-called explorations and expansions to the west. So that's about what, 1877 to roughly about 1913. All during those periods, you couldn't trust paper money, not one. They would literally have to utilize gold. Hence, you had the
Mhm.
gold standard.
Gold standard, yeah.
So therefore, this is nothing new in the United States. Like literally this instability and then the subsequent insurrection where the masses, and that in itself is funny to me because like you're punishing the workers who, don't forget, are the citizens who quote unquote elect these people, who quote
Yeah.
unquote these people should be answering to. And
Yeah.
I juxtapose that with this movie because you have these mafia guys who, like CJ mentioned so eloquently, hey, business was put on hold because there was a lack of trust, and that's a major theme here. This guy who is in charge of one of the major gambling dens, you can't trust him. So the
Yeah.
streets are talking, regardless of whether or not he had any culpability in this particular one. His credibility is shot because he did at one point in time rob his own game. So now
Yeah.
you've got to get rid of him. He's got this. You can't give him a pass. If he
Yeah.
didn't do what he did the first time, then you could say, hey, you know what? Plausible deniability, yada, yada, yada. He didn't do it. He's an upstanding guy. And you could justify why you like him. You like him because he's charismatic, which, again, as CJ pointed out, here you have Ray Liotta, one of the all-time greats. Rest in power to him as well, especially when it comes to mafia flicks. Most people know him for, excuse me, most of him know him strictly because of the mafia movies, Goodfellas in particular. You have James Gandolfini, which we talked about, where you know him from. More than likely, you hear the theme song in your head to what you call it, to
Sopranos.
Sopranos. So it's not lost upon CJ and myself that the director here is taking pot shots and trying to put it out there that yes, the mafia is a source of comic relief. They are not the people we should be idolizing and putting on a pedestal as we once did.
Yeah, I want. Yeah, and that's something I actually have a question about, or I had a question about that. But there was something that you mentioned about the idea of how much it takes. What's the cost of a person to risk something for themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was and I can't. I wish I could remember the name of the documentary, but it was a documentary about political officials, like people in Congress who have taken bribes, right? And I always remember that one of the people said in the documentary that you would be surprised how low of an amount of money that people will take to
Mm.
risk essentially their career, right? And I think, like as like the average person, you watch a movie or a situation, I think it's really easy for us to look at a situation and say, okay, there's no like if I'm gonna rob something, I'm gonna rob a bank. I'm gonna rob a bank for $2 million, right? But if you're in a real desperate situation, maybe 20 grand looks good. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
like I see shows where like, I mean, I see like the news and people are like, robbing the Chanel store and stealing 5 bags. You know what I mean? Like that's like, but I think all of that is a reflection of where the times are and the level of desperation that people feel, and like how desperation, like any sort of trauma, just limits your decision making and even like the value that you place on things. So it's like it's just crazy because it's like in the end of this, you're thinking like, wow, all this death and carnage essentially for $100,000 is what's happening in this movie.
I don't, just to piggyback. Are you talking about either Dirty Money from 2018, that documentary, or are you talking about what is it?
I
It
don't
was
think it
just on the
was
tip,
Dirty Money. There's
or
another
is it
one like I think.
Inside Job?
Yeah, it could have been one of those, but I think it was particular to the idea of like bribes. It could have been. It could
Mm.
have been one of those. I don't remember the exact one, but I always remember that because I always think like there's a big difference between like what we think we
Mm.
would do a crime for and what we would actually
Yeah,
do a
yeah, yeah.
crime for, right? And like you said, like you're in a tight spot. You never know. Like most, like they like there. I remember reading once that sociologists had determined that after a certain number of days of going without food, people are going to be likely to commit a crime.
Mm.
Right. So like maybe that was like 6 or 7 days. After that, somebody will steal. Even somebody who's not going to steal at
Yeah,
all, they will because like there's a sense of desperation that just kicks in
yeah,
that
urgency.
makes that decision seem more valid and legitimate.
Yeah, well, the first law of nature is self-preservation.
Absolutely.
which is why, again, I don't understand even the how does something like that even enter your mind when Squirrel is giving his soliloquy as to why things are going to go down the way they are. You can hear the reservation in his speech itself, where he's
Yeah.
like, I don't trust, that I could tell you this. And then Frankie's like, yo, give me the particulars so I know what I'm getting myself into. The fact that he won't tell his man, like, yo, this is what it is, this is what we're gonna do, that should tell you something. Because if you're asking him to risk his life, yo, you should be forthcoming with the swiftness. Then when he says, yo, look, if you want to go get, um, if you want to go get such and such into this or whatever, or get this guy, cool. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I could really care less at this point. And the thing for me is, I know the background story, which is Marky robbed his own game. Therefore, if it
Yes.
happens again, he's the fall guy. That takes all the heat off of me. But where they mess up with is getting a heroin addict
Yeah. It
to
wasn't.
perform.
It wasn't a best laid plan.
No, not at all. Not at all.
It was not that. It was not that. All right. So, anything else about like the sort of the overall movie before we jump into the cake?
And I think the main thing that we've discussed though is how visceral this portrayal is. Um, and I think the one thing that is um, kind of highlighted, I guess, is the intentional decisions of who is portrayed in these movies. So I mentioned just moments ago about the heroin addict, but it's been throughout the movie announced that he is Australian and that he is, and again, hedonism, folks, is played throughout this movie the entire time from the word go, whether it be the gambling, the fornication, the overindulgence in whatever type of drug that's highlighted, whether it be heroin or alcohol. The fact is that these individuals are abundantly made clear that they are not to be idolized. With that being said, with respect to the Australian criminal. Um, a little history note is English people had deported their worst people to the location of Australia. So when this guy is talking about him fornicating with, uh,
A dog.
yeah, I'm trying to
With a
trying to
dog.
be
I mean,
diplomatic.
you already said fornicate. Like, just yeah, dog.
With a
Okay,
dog
good
and
enough.
also an elderly, dirty old man
In jail. Yes,
in
you did say
jail.
that. Yeah.
Um, I don't know
Shout
what
outs
it
to Ben
says.
Mendelsohn.
Yes,
Shout out to you. Shout out to you for this role, my
I
man.
mean, he really indulged. So I don't, and he's sweaty throughout the time. He's dirty looking. He's unhinged. Just filthy. He is the incarnate of filthiness. I wonder what it's saying. What the director is trying to say about Australians. Then there's a scene that CJ and I talked about moments ago in the pre-production meeting where um, Brad Pitt pulls up to this bar location where Frankie's supposed to be at. In turn, he pulls out a snub nose, ensures that there's enough bullets in it, and he puts it in behind his back. In the background, you hear a black gentleman saying, this is my block. So obviously, this is about drugs. And he's proclaiming to all those on there that, he's marked his territory and to be
Mhm.
gone. Um, Maybe 2 seconds later, you hear gunshots and you see
Yeah,
two guys on the right hand side of the sidewalk running, and then the gentleman who's on the left is no longer standing. I think that was intentional to
of course.
showcase that, look, all the stuff that's going on, the day to day struggle, um, that doesn't even register on a larger scale. These people will be, a blip on the 12 o'clock news, whereas the real crimes that are being committed, you'll never even hear them being broadcast. The
Mhm.
real exchange of money. Brad
Mhm.
Pitt then goes into the bar and he offers this quote unquote pseudo option for this guy to redeem himself and to prolong his life. Everyone knows that this is a setup. This guy can't afford to live. I mean, he's seen Brad Pitt's face. He's a witness. There's so many things that are going to go wrong for this guy, but he naively believes that he has a way out. Uh, I think that's indicative of a lot of people who have been trusted in the banking system that we've been talking about, in the government itself, in these systems that we were led to believe have our best interests.
Yeah, and then they find out that that's not the case.
Not at
So
all.
there it is. All right, let's get into the cake, man. So I know we got some things. I know I got some things I like to
Yeah,
know. You got some things too as well.
yeah.
We talked a little bit about it. I'm gonna just go through mine first. We talked a little bit about it. The Brad Pitt, James Gandolfini scenes. The first one, there's two really main scenes, I think, with the two of them in it, but I'm referencing the one in the bar when they first get together, and we talked about it when James Gandolfini's character is just knocking these martinis and beers out. What I like about that scene is I just watched the Sopranos documentary on HBO Max, which I would highly recommend as well. And it reminded me of how much James Gandolfini brought like this multi-layered kind of perspective to the portrayal of Tony Soprano. So yeah, Tony Soprano was like this like really evil mob boss, but then he was also like a dad, and he also had like anxiety issues and all this kind of stuff. And in that scene, particularly, he's just going through all the ranges of the emotions. Like he's funny talking about the gun that he got arrested for that was legal. Then he's got like all this sadness talking about this woman that he wanted to be with that's not going to be with him. And in the midst of it, he's just down in this liquor, letting you know that he's not doing well. And I just thought like his doing that, and then the way Brad Pitt kind of is in the scene, but also like outside of it a little bit as the viewer in some ways. I just really liked how they handled that. So that was like one of the things I really liked on the cake side. The other thing is the graphic and very stylized violence. Like the scenes when Ray Liotta's character gets beat up, it's
Mm.
brutal and it lasts for like it's not even last like 10 minutes. It wasn't that long, but you hear the thud of every punch, the blood he throws up twice. Like it's such a violent scene. And then his death scene is the same way. And the death scenes for everyone that's killed in this movie, there's nothing nice about it. It happens on screen, it's very graphic. And I'm not saying I like to see that, but I like that in the movie they tried to just show you just like what does violence really look like at this level, right? It's like it's horrible. So I just thought like I liked how they leaned into that. That was my cake from this movie.
It's funny that CJ references those particular scenes. Um, First of all, the camera shot and the view allows the viewer to see in slow mo
Yeah. It's
the
like Matrix murder.
yeah, you get to see
It's-
the shards of glass, the
yep,
blood
yep,
splatter, and the
yep,
pattering. Um,
yep.
and when they pull up alongside of him, he doesn't even have time to be afraid. Like he
Yeah.
just looks, and then it's almost over with. But
Yeah.
they managed to use a great CGI effort in order to like slow it down. And then you see him raising his hand. You see the bull, excuse me, the bullet pierce his skull and exit out the back. You see the tumbling of the vehicle, and then the indirect aftermath where the other vehicles are now impacted too, where he's like in another car accident. Um, and I think that is indicative of society as a whole, where there is a butterfly effect, where if you do commit a crime, what happens to those people that you did rob? Sure, the money may be insured, but what about the trauma that these individuals undergo? The psychological ramifications, the fear of them going back to resuming a business. Do they even bother to do that? Do they relocate? Do they go and purchase a handgun, for example? And then all of a sudden, what happens with that? Do they mistakenly, harm somebody else? Because, the old adage, hurt people hurt people.
Mhm.
CJ also mentioned the bar scene in which, you know, let's face facts. You have a guy who um, is not capable of performing, and I'm not highlighting or idolizing this, but he's not capable of performing the vicious acts that he was known for. He was an efficient killer, and he was
Mhm.
hired for this. And if you're a professional, that means that you obviously look at this as a craft, that you have taken some time and devotion in order to honing your skills. Well,
Yeah.
he tells Brad Pitt, I'm not built for this. Like, essentially he's saying like, yo, I can't go. And then all of a sudden he's like, you know what? In his tirade, yeah, let's go right now. And Brad Pitt, when conveying this to the drivers, like, he wants to go into skivvies right now, running around looking for somebody. No, we
Yeah.
can't
After
have
another
this.
scene. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't
Yep.
have this. We're better off not having him around. We should
Mhm.
indict him. And that's never lost upon me. These are guys who are sometimes often blood relatives killing each other, or this code that they live up to, where they're saying we have ethics, honor amongst thieves, yet they're the ones ratting on each other. They're on tape. They're on video camera. There's video footage of promoting this. So that goes into some of the things that I liked, as well as a lot of quotables. None more so than a couple of scenes. I'm not going to go through the lines, but there is one that I will. Um, but a brief highlight of some of these scenes are, like CJ mentioned, the bar scene, the hotel scene, both with Brad Pitt and James Gandolfini, who are at their best, their volley and wordplay, which is another thing I like. The cast itself. Um, then we have the scene in which Jackie's talking to the driver, and this I definitely need to highlight. He says, "You ever kill someone?" That's Jackie, and the driver says no. Jackie retorts, "It can get touchy feely," and the driver says, "Touchy feely." And then Jackie says, "Emotional, not fun, a lot of fuss." So now he's giving a literal definition, which is kind of funny in that scene where you would think that these numbskulls are like, what? Or it's just implied that you know what it is. But here he is being sarcastic and giving him a literal definition. Then he says, "They cry, they plead, they beg, they piss themselves, they call for their mothers. It gets embarrassing. I like to kill them softly from a distance, not close enough for feelings. I don't like feelings. I don't want to think about them." So just with respect to that, it highlights how he's not this psychopath where he gets enjoyment from killing them or has no
Right.
empathy or
It's a
sympathy.
job for
It's a
him. Yeah.
job,
It's a
and
job. Yeah.
it's almost like a necessary evil. And then, of course, you have which I found very enlightening, the various presidents giving their take on the economy and trying to assuage the public and the masses. But the none more encapsulates all of this than the closing scenes and the closing line by Jackie, where you'll hear Barack Obama on TV trying to inspire the nation as to how we are a common family and we have hope embodied by him, and thus, the saying, the cliche, "Yes, we can." So he's delivering one of those victory speeches, and Driver says, "You hear that? Line's for you." And Jackie says, "Don't make me laugh. We're one people. It's a myth created by Thomas Jefferson." And then he goes on to give why Jefferson, et cetera, yada yada yada. And then Driver says, "Oh, now you're gonna now you're gonna have at it with Jefferson, huh?" And Jackie says, "My friend Jefferson's an American saint because he wrote." This is so funny. The words, "All men are created equal." Words he clearly didn't believe since he allowed his own children to live in slavery.
How
He was
about
a
that?
he was a rich wine snob who was sick of paying taxes, and the visual of someone sitting back with their foot just
Yeah. How
twirling
about
in the
that?
air and on his leg or his lap, sipping wine by the candlelight or by a fireplace, is not lost amongst me. But nonetheless, I digress. He was a rich wine snob who was sick of paying taxes to the Brits. So, yeah, he wrote some lovely words and aroused the rabble. And they went out and died for those words while he sat back and drank his wine and his slave girl. This guy wants to tell me we're living in a community? Don't make me laugh. I'm living in America. And in America, you're on your own. America is not a country. It's just a business. Now effing pay me. And
Yeah.
I think that right there, that line is really what it's about. The dollar, the almighty dollar is king. And literally it says on the dollar bill, "In God we trust." So
Hmm.
the God that you're talking about is not the spiritual one, the one who provides a afterlife after the here and now. No, this is the God of money, of economics, of business, of cold hard numbers and dollars and cents.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the end is kind of like the hammer, sledgehammer exclamation point
Hmm.
on the movie. So yeah, that line, yeah, that definitely does that. And then, I always like in movies when they find a way to put the movie title into it. So when he said
Hmm.
the "Killing Them Softly"
Hmm.
joint, I was like, yeah, that's like the
Hmm.
the Leonardo DiCaprio joint. They're gonna say the part. So
Yeah,
yeah, they did that.
yeah,
So yeah, so that's the things that we liked. So we got some things that we didn't like. I got some things I didn't like. So I got a couple.
tell about you.
So yes, I got a couple of them. So the first thing is the pacing of the movie. It just, to me, the movie just felt like it was kind of moving kind of slowly.
Mm.
Like maybe it's because they were being killed slowly. So I mean, so it just kind of
Though the
the movie
irony.
just kind of moved slowly for me. And I think and I said this to you earlier, I think I was just expecting something to happen. I was expecting the movie to like not sort of go in this very methodical kind of slow way that it did. maybe one of the guys would like get smart and try to leave, or there'd be a chase, or
Mm,
one of them would have a weapon and be waiting on Brad Pitt, or just something that would just kind of, or they would try to negotiate with him and say, "Hey, look, they paying you 15, I'll give you 30, let me leave." Like
mm.
something would happen. None of that did. So that was one of the things I didn't like too much. Next thing is like, all right, there's like one black character in this whole thing, man. And it's a woman, and it's like her job is like hooker. Like that's her actual role is. And I was watching it and I'm thinking, like, dang, it's 2012. We're gonna put somebody black in a joint. Like, they could have a line. They got lines. They could have like a name or something. It just I didn't get it. And maybe, and we talked about this earlier. Maybe there's a point in doing that. Maybe the character is just called Hooker because in the background you have another black person being elected into president of the United States. So maybe there's like a juxtaposition there. But as you said earlier, the scene where Brad Pitt is walking into the bar, it's two black people out there shooting each other just randomly in the background, just like this nameless, kind of faceless, violent monster thing that black people are going through, that I don't understand what the intention is, and I don't like that that was there. And I also don't like that this woman is just called a hooker, or even her interaction with James Gandolfini in that scene. So that was my other thing.
You
I
can't
did
forget in
feel
the
like,
backdrop though, when they're at the bar, the bartender's black, and the bartender is legally administering a drug. So
yeah,
you have
that's
the
cool.
so you have the
That's cool.
illegal drug outside and the legal drug inside.
And maybe that's the point. But I still just like give her a name. That's all I'm saying. Like she's a person. She's a person. She could have a name in the movie.
I dig it.
All right. The messaging. So we talked about it, and I felt like I got like within 20 minutes like where the movie is trying to go. I did feel like it was kind of sledgehammering the whole 2008 crisis. This is a allegory thing for it. So that they could have probably taken the foot off that a little bit. And then the ending I thought was a little flat. One of the things that I tend to really like I always look at how movies end. Like things have to end well for me to really like them. And the ending scene, it just felt flat because although I get the point that Brad Pitt is making, it just I don't know, I just felt like I just needed something more. So those were the things that I didn't like too much about
I'm
it.
curious, what more did you want though? What were you looking for? What did you expect?
I guess I guess the scene is the fact that they're actually sitting there arguing about how much he's going to get paid at that point seemed ridiculous to me.
Well,
So I wasn't even expecting that conversation to
mm,
even be what happened.
really? Didn't
No, I
don't you
didn't.
don't recall the scenes in the car where they're arguing over economics and he's like, "Yo, how much is it going to cost to get this other
Right,
prostitute?" And he's like, 500,000. He's like, 500,000? Like which he's like, I got to go
right. They're
back
doing
to
all the yeah. I know they're
and
doing all
he's
the
haggling
calculation. Like, yeah,
and he's like, "Dude, it's only $500 or 1,000." But then
yes,
driver says, "Yo, each time I got to go back to the bosses and tell them about this."
yeah,
And that is problematic. They don't want to hear about complications or problems. And I
yep,
think that scene is them sticking the landing where they're like, look, everything is upside down, topsy turvy. But you know, the one thing that remains constant? Money, and money talks. And right now,
sure,
you are you are insulting my intelligence. I am a I am a professional killer. You're
right.
trying to haggle me for money. Do you know what I will do to you?
But he doesn't actually threaten him. He
He doesn't
doesn't
have
threaten
to.
the driver.
He
But
doesn't.
right. But that's the thing is he doesn't threaten him. They're still negotiating on something that's already been negotiated, and that's like the whole conversation itself doesn't it just doesn't make sense because they've already negotiated the terms. They're already clear. It felt like driver is actually trying to rip him off.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like, and when he says, "Now pay me my money," okay, so what happens then? Does he give him the money? Does he not give him the money? Does he not? Does he go outside? Does Brad Pitt shoot him in his car? What happened? Like that's the point.
I
Like,
think that's the cliffhanger, though.
right, I just want the ending. I get that. I just want the ending. It's all good. It's all cool. That's a cliffhanger. I just want the ending. Because guess what? Ain't gonna be no killing them softly part two. So what happened? Like,
Okay.
what happened, man? Let me know. So yeah, so that's all. So, so those are my things, man.
Oh,
What so you're good though.
yeah,
None
no, I'm
nothing
straight. I think that the movie, even though it can be heavy handed at times, I think it's necessary to drive home the point for those who are skeptical. There's plenty of people who are like lost in the clouds, and they
Yeah.
are in a haze wearing these rose-colored glasses to think that, it is possible to make it, that, the streets are still paved with gold. And I I'm not sure that they're aware of America's nightmare.
Let's get into the questions though. All right. So the questions. All right. So here's my first one.
Shoot.
And I think we might have got on this, but I'm gonna ask a question anyway. After it had been robbed once, why wouldn't the high stakes mafia card game have some kind of security attached to it?
Oh no, I think we alluded to this, but we never directly answered this. Security. Well, honestly, I think there were some type of security measures. Remember, they're running through the corridor. It's very tight. I mean,
Mhm.
so like you put one person at one end and one at the other, it's a wrap. You only need two guys. But for whatever reason, they didn't show that. But I think that's due to the movie needing to show like these guys got lucky in that, every now and then even a garbage can gets steak.
Got it. All right. And this goes along with that. So the next question is, why didn't Frankie and Russell leave town after they committed the robbery?
It's
Why are
not
they
even
still there? Why are
just
they still
them.
there?
It's not even just them. I mean, like, forget Frankie and Russell. Squirrel should have left. Even
Oh,
even
yeah,
Marky should have left. I mean,
yeah.
these dudes literally, their life was over as soon as they walked out with that money. And it shouldn't be not highlighted that the plan was just to take the money in the briefcases.
Mhm.
Totally escalated when he starts telling the guys, yeah, and go in your wallets and your pockets and
Yeah,
your sock.
yeah, that wasn't a part of it. Yep.
Woo, that went to a whole nother level where literally now these guys are like, all right, you take the other money, whatever. Now you're making it personal. So
Yeah,
why didn't they leave? I think that they were young, naive, dumb, stupid, reckless, high off of drugs. Pick something. Like
and that's
they were
why
full
they're
of
dead,
themselves.
except for the one that's in jail.
Yeah, well,
It's
he got lucky, but don't think he's off the hook. I think they shivved him in jail.
possible that it. Yeah, they could. Yeah, that's a good point. All right. So I have a question. This is the one about just actors.
Mhm.
Do you think there are times when actors take roles in films just because it's a job?
I know they do. I've heard countless stories from actors themselves saying like, "Hey, I needed the paycheck," and they hated the movie. One of the people that comes to mind is Timothy Oliphant in Agent 77.
I
The
didn't even see that.
37. Sorry, 37. It's
I
based
didn't
upon
even
a
see.
movie. There's a remake too, or not or an extension or whatever. He's a bald headed dude. He's Hitman.
Is that
Whatever.
like a Hitman movie or
Yeah,
something like that? Yeah. Okay.
it's
All right. I
based
do
upon
remember that.
the video game. And
Yeah.
he says like, I hate it. I only did it because it was part of a deal. And that's another thing. These movie studios and executives tie other movies to the deal of a movie that they want to get made. Even Law and Order made a satire about it, where this guy had to make this kid movie, and he really wanted to direct this serious movie, but he ends up killing one of the movie executives that he was married to because she wouldn't allow him to make the movie he wanted to make.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. That's my questions.
I dig
That's
it.
my questions, man. We're on to yours.
Rapid fire. All right, so wow, we've covered a lot of the questions I was going to ask, but let's go with this one. Are Dylan and Marky stand-ins for George H.W. Bush as, excuse me, and respectively George W. Bush?
That is a really good question, man. I think so, actually. I really do, man, because they both Dylan and Marky get killed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in a way, they're, like the presidencies of
Mm.
HW and W come to an end. Yeah, I think that holds up. That's a really deep one. I definitely agree with that. Yes, I do
Yeah.
think that.
All right, let's get with number two. Is Jackie the modern day version of Brad Pitt's Jesse James from The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford? Except this time he gets to live.
So I saw that the director and Brad Pitt worked together on that movie,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unfortunately, I've never seen that movie, so I
Mm.
don't I don't know if I could draw that parallel, but I will ask you this. By your asking that question, are you suggesting that you think that that's what the case is?
I can see some parallels. The way that everything is stylized. He comes
Okay.
in, he's in instead of a horse, he's in an old fashioned I forget what type of car, and that's another thing. All those cars are classic modern, excuse me, classic muscle cars that
Yeah,
you
they
see the
are.
guys driving in.
Yep.
And I think,
Mustangs. Yeah.
yeah, so I think
Yeah.
it's a drawback to, horses and such, that these are the last remnants of cowboys. So I could see certain things that align themselves, the way that he's a lone gunman, and when he does have to delegate, he does so in a way that is like, I know this guy's limitations and I'm going to pay him accordingly, like he does in the diner scene with Slane, the rapper. Shout out to La Costa Nostra. And he says to him, look, you get $500 for a killing. $500 where you're
That's
offering
crazy.
15,000 to James Gandolfini and this, that, and the third.
Hmm.
I found it really, it wasn't lost amongst me picking up on that. Let's just say that.
Got it. Got it.
My third question.
Was that movie good? The Assassination of Jesse
Yeah, I
James.
liked it. Kind of long. Kind of long. There's
Okay.
some dry spells, but all in all, I give it about three quarters.
Okay.
Popcorn boxes. Like it's better than what I thought it would be.
Okay. All right.
Um,
I'll have to check it out sometime.
yeah. Like it's I don't think it's gonna be something we should highlight though. Sorry, folks. It's not something.
Okay. All right. Maybe you never know, man. You never know. We're only 50 shows in. You never know what we'll do next.
Perhaps. Number 3. If the mob is an allegory for the U.S., why would anyone want to challenge and or steal from them?
Yeah. This is a good one too, man. It's funny because I do think that I can see the parallel of the mafia being like the United States. If that's the case, I think in some ways the United States citizens try to rob the United States all the time
Get out of here.
in different ways. Yeah, I mean, like, think about how many times people try to obfuscate everything that's on their taxes. Just think about that.
Okay.
Think about like every time there's like a rule that says you can only do 55 in this area, but you
Mm,
do
yeah,
65.
yeah,
Trying to get
okay.
over. Think about like just all the ways that people try to like get over a little bit. They try to
Yeah.
beat like we have this expression, beat the system. But
Mm,
the system is the United States. We try to figure out how to beat it all the time,
yeah.
right? So maybe that's the robbing of the mafia thing. I don't know.
Wow, that's
That's
tough.
that's an interesting question too, man. You're deep into the allegory bag with these ones right here,
That's an
man.
interesting
That's a good
answer.
one.
I never even thought
It,
of that. Wow. That's tough,
that's a good
CJ.
one. That's a
Okay.
good one. Man. By the way, I'm not saying that you should try to lie on your taxes.
No,
Pay
CJ.
all the taxes that you're supposed to, just like I do. just like I do.
Oh man. Why would Squirrel and Frankie incorporate Russell into this plan?
I think, like you've said, so you've brought this up before. The inclusion of Russell in the plan is how you know Squirrel and Frankie are not good at what they're doing.
Mm,
Like that they can't find like at least somebody who's sober to be a part of a crime is like the beginning of them going down the tubes because was it Russell tells the guys that he did the crime, which is what lets everybody know who did it. So it just reinforces the idea that these guys are really not good at what they're doing.
which is crazy. How would you not know who's affiliated with who, and why are you spilling your guts about anything?
As you was high. That's why.
Whew.
Heroin is a hell of
Oh,
a drug
drug.
too. Like cocaine.
Oh, that's crazy. Oh man. My last question for you is this: what made Marky feel comfortable telling mob guys he robbed his own game?
I don't know, man. And I couldn't understand why there wasn't an immediate consequence for
Hmm.
that. So it was just a strange detail. But as we were saying earlier, I do think that part of this movie is about the undressing of like the idea of the mafia movie where there's definitely these strict rules and these processes and these consequences that happen based on certain actions because you don't really see it play out that way.
Right.
Marky is like he somehow gets away scot free from robbing people before, but then he dies for not doing anything at all the second time. So it's like it's such a random thing. I don't know. I don't know. That's something I should have put that in my head. Like I didn't know why
It does seem
that didn't
very
add up.
arbitrary. Like,
It's a real plot hole when you think about it.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what I got for my questions. Let's get into the popcorn.
All right, so popcorn. So I got two boxes with this one, man.
Oof,
It wasn't. It wasn't.
oof,
This is mostly Colonel for me. Mostly
oof.
Colonel, man.
And CJ doesn't give out too many of those, so that's really telling me something. All right, there.
Mostly Colonel, man. What about you?
I got four, man. This
Oh,
is
yeah.
one of my one of my likes as far as
Hmm.
movies go. I love the acting. I love the cast. Cinematography does very well in certain aspects. I like the way like how the light impinges upon certain scenes when it's trying to denote a very serious or something of a very high moral standing. And I also like the fact that they chose certain scenes deliberately. Like this wasn't a romantic fest where you got these introductions of relationships and such. No, these are men who are in a very bleak, cold, dark environment.
It
And
is
there's
very
no,
depressing.
yeah, it's no very depressing. There's
It's
no
very,
touchy feely. So it's not
it's a
lost
very
books.
depressing movie.
Yeah, man. But yeah, that's what I'm working with, man.
Got it. Got it. All right. Well, let's kick it to the closing then.
Yes, sir. Killing Them Softly is a film that intertwines lusciously staged violence with absorbing practical and protracted exchanges of dialogue, making a significant mark on the crime genre. Directed by Australian writer-director Andrew Dominic, this adaptation of George V. Higgins' 1974 novel, Cogan's Trade, overlays a crime story with cutting and political overtones. The film delves into the underworld, presenting an introspection as well as an inspection that could serve as a metaphor for America's false sense of community, economic corruption and despair, and moral ambiguity. The film offers a grim commentary on the nature of crime and economics, highlighting the parallels between the criminal underworld and broader social structures. This movie is a narrative and thematic depth. Killing Them Softly establishes as an instant American crime classic for this viewer right here. CJ,
There it
not
is.
so much.
Yeah, not so much for me. Not so much for me, man. But um, yeah, that the like I said, the allegory, how it's trying to hold up and compare the crisis with the robbery. I get that. So that's definitely there. Next week we are coming back. We're continuing with robbery movies, right? Next week we're
Yeah.
doing Heat.
Woo,
So
classic.
it's more class, more violence and robberies. That's what we're doing, man. That's what the
Whoosh.
month of September
That's the
is
yes, sir.
for us. So yes, we're gonna get into that. Once again, the Sticky Floors podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. We are on YouTube. Once again, we are pushing to get 300 subscribers by the end of October. So we are asking you to subscribe, like, and share. And we will see you next week. Peace.